Hello, everyone. Those who may be watching this on the rebroadcast as well. Good evening. I am Lorana Hughes, and I will be doing a series of gatherings on 4 Sundays. Same time, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, and right now it's 4 p.m. Ecuador time. And so this will be the first one. And let me tell you a little bit about why I am taking the time to do these recordings and why RePioneering Church and what I hope to accomplish by spending this time in these sessions each month. First, I'd like to tell you about RePioneering Church. Um, in looking at fixing community, I realized that there's a spiritual element of that. And when we start thinking about spirituality, we oftentimes think of the boxes that we find faith and spirituality in. And oftentimes those boxes don't oftentimes work well together. And in looking at if we're going to fix community and the work that needs to be done to really do the foundational fixing is spiritual work, it's the healing work, then how do we do spirituality in a way that matches with the principles of the universe, of nature, and that's diversity? And that led me down a road really saying that we need to have an interfaith spiritual community in communities, places where individuals can come together regardless of their chosen faith traditions or the practices that they use, and do the spiritual work that is what I believe the best foundation for fixing community. And so towards that end, RePioneering Church was birthed. And I'll take time to read the organizing statements that really states the purpose and why we chose to co-opt the term church. So a group of folks that agreed on the definition of church being, and this is the defining, the co-opting of that terminology, defined the church as meaning the network of people who are committed to living their personal purpose. Good evening. I was just talking about co-opting spirituality and that being part of what we're doing. And so I was reading, I'm going to read through just briefly at the beginning of each of these sessions, a little bit about how we have gone about creating an interfaith spiritual community. That healing work is spiritual work, regardless of what people's faith traditions and beliefs and tenets of faith are, that we need a place in community where finding your tradition is your responsibility, but we can come together and do the healing work. And so towards that end, we decided we're going to co-opt terms that people already know. Sometimes they know them from old definitions. So here's the intro of our organizing statement. We decided that a group of folks who agreed on the definition for church being this: the network of people who are committed to living their personal purpose, to seek out and find and act on the points of connection in supporting others who are likewise committed and who seek to love everyone else. This really is about people who are trying to live their purpose, live their truth, and that network of people is what we should be calling church. That's what we should be using that term for. And we decided we were going to come together, make a commitment to come together and do this thing of supporting each other and living out our purposes where we find connection. And we decided to call this thing RePioneering Church. And in making that commitment, we decided first we're going to come together in love. We're going to create loving and life-embracing spiritual community of people who do life together in whatever ways they find to do that while they carry out their own individual life purposes. That we come together in love to do stuff that helps each of us find fulfillment in life, helps us fulfill our personal purposes, and supports each other doing the same. We're going to come together in love to do stuff that shows what love is. This is love in action with no strings attached to everyone else. And that we come together in love to heal ourselves so that we are better equipped to carry out our personal and collective life purposes. And like that, for me, if I had to do anything, because for a long time I was a church anarchist, it didn't work, it didn't make sense to me, and why do that? And so for me, that really is the kind of heart-centered connectedness of people And I thought, why don't we just co-opt those words that are used in other ways? And that's what we've done. And so towards that, in part of the thought process of doing these sessions each month has been one that part of that foundation is healing. And when you start looking at your values, and this system really teaches you to look deeply at your values and make sure you're living them, or fix the things that keep you from living those values. And it was, how do you commodify healing? We live in a world where everything's got a price tag. And it's like that, something about that doesn't feel good to me. And having certain liberties in life to say, I think we're not going to hoard healing. And what I decided to do was, I'll hold these sessions. I'll do a brief training, and I'll invite people from all different walks of life and faith and belief systems to come and participate in real time. And we'll put this information out there so that if individuals want better tools for healing, that they can go and find these readily available with as few of the barriers removed. Still got to have some internet, but most people today have access to internet. And that they could, if they wanted at least some beginning steps, could go and follow along with these videos and be able to begin using the tools. For me, that felt like a better alignment with my values. And so I've asked people to participate once a month, come and spend about an hour and a half. Let us share the tools and then walk through the use of those tools in real time, and then make that available. And that for me is what I feel like I can do, what I can give, so that if individuals are looking for solutions, here's one. It's not the only one, but it's a real good one. And making that available is what this is all about. So this evening, Dwayne, welcome. Thank you for coming and joining me this evening. How are you today?
I'm living the dream. What about yourself?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Thank you for agreeing to join me this evening. And what I'm going to do is spend about 15 or 20 minutes just going through the steps, and then we'll see if there's a life situation that you've either worked through or want to work through, where we can talk through the process together. Some of this has been maybe a refresher. You and I have done spent a few session times together talking about these tools and giving you some pointers and feedback on using these tools. So some of it may be a refresher. If questions come up, just stop me. If there's something that you feel isn't clear, because the audience will be other people, then let me know, and I'll try to put different words to it, because we want this to be information that people can readily use, that if they were watching the video, that they really understand how to use these tools in a real practical way. So feel free to interrupt and interject if something comes up. But we'll start with the idea about trauma. And one of the things that we've done is we've looked at some different ways of approaching what trauma really is. And at the core, I've realized that trauma is what happens anytime your values get conflicted. If something happens that goes against what your values are, that is where trauma is created. It doesn't decide whether your values are good, bad, right, or wrong. It simply says, if something happens that disagrees with your values, that's where trauma happens. And if we use that model, we begin to see that there are ways to heal that damage that happens in our lives. Because what happens is something happens that goes against your values, and oftentimes your immediate response is to protect yourself. What are you protecting yourself from? Usually when your values are violated, it triggers fear. Now, fear sometimes gets packaged like guilt or insecurity, but if we take those uncomfortable emotions and reduce them down, it's really about fear. And if that's the case, you have a choice sometimes in the behaviors that you choose. Now, sometimes those choices are reinforced behaviors, almost like muscle memory. You've done it so long that you're used to responding in that way. But initially, those responses are to protect you from what's happening. And so as you use those behaviors, oftentimes, if you're in another similar situation, those behaviors become your regular behavior, response behaviors. You may hear it called coping mechanisms. But what I began to understand was when we redefined what trauma really is. Trauma happening every time something conflicts with your values. We realized that we are able to begin to heal that process, but that we also understood that trauma operates just like addiction. We don't like to say that because sometimes in society, we like to say those people because their situation is worse than mine. But when I began to understand that this is something that we all have, and it operates for all of us in the same way, the more we practice those coping mechanisms, the more we just automatically reach for those three things. And I call them behavioral drugs of choice. They're the things that we do to help us not feel so out of control with the fear, guilt, and insecurity. When I realized that and began to understand a little bit more about that process, I realized that we do have solutions for how to resolve that. Because the end of the day, if we aren't able to live in love, to help us get to living in love, logically for me, it's we'll figure out why we're not. As I began to do that work some 20 some years ago, every one of the excuses for why we aren't operating in love boiled down to we got issues. We got issues. And those issues, the trauma, the behavior that comes from that if we don't fix that, then we got to force people to try to act in loving ways. And that's hard. We see it all around us. And so in the next 15 or 20 minutes, I'm going to talk to you about that vantage point. I ask you to open up to what if it actually worked this way? Could we actually undo the damage of living in a traumatizing world? And so I began to look, who are the people in society? Who are the people in society that actually have been watching and helping us learn? Who are the paradigm shifters in this particular area? And I began to find some of them and began to do this work. And the first thing they said was, if you're going to undo the damage, and this is step one of the process, it's you have to start with truth. If you're going to do healing work, there's some commitments that you have to make. And one of the big ones, how honest are you willing to be with yourself? I have found in my own experience that healing only works, or it works in correlation to how honest I'm willing to be with myself. That's the first step. If you're willing to do the work of healing and you're willing to be honest, we're on a good start. Because the very first step says, let's first start with the facts. If we're going to analyze what's happening, what's happened to me that I think is causing me some damage, I need to know what's happened. And the very first part of this is, if you can imagine being a playwright, the first thing you talk about are the facts. Where are you at? When did this happen? Because we're talking about the past. Where are you at? When did this happen? Who are the people involved in the situation? What's the scenery? What's happening around you? And then what happened? Not your analysis of what happened. What happened usually sounds like, I did this, you did this, I did this, and you did this, and I felt this way because this situation is happening in front of me. Those are usually the facts. Now, when we get into analysis, it's you did this because to go on in things that I have tried to piece together to make sense of this situation in my mind. But we say, do you actually want to undo the damage? If so, let's start with the facts, what actually happened. And included in the facts are my feelings, because those are the first things we usually shove out of the way when something happens to us that triggers uncomfortable emotions. What happened and how am I feeling about that? What are the words that describe what I'm actually feeling in this situation? For a lot of people, that begins to be the first recognition of, man, this is why this healing thing is kind of hard, because this is hard. It's hard to separate out just the facts without wanting to give the explanation, wanting to explain why I did this and maybe what you were thinking, why you would do a certain thing, or I'm trying to figure out that. And we say, don't do that. Leave that till later. You'll have time for that. What are the facts? But the second part of that, if you can separate out the facts, is what are you feeling? Can you actually put words to what you're feeling? Do you have the vocabulary? And oftentimes when individuals start working this process, we have them look up online word lists, feeling wheels. Because being able to communicate what you're feeling and thinking to someone that's outside of your mind helps us to be better in relationship with others. How do we come into community and have loving and honest conversations, and I can't put into words what I'm feeling and what I'm thinking to be able to help you understand what's going on within me? That is one of the breakdowns in community that we see so often. I'm talking and you not comprehending what's happening. For me, living in a country that speaks a language other than the language that I have grown up knowing, I spend lots of time making sure that I'm communicating effectively. In community, we have a real big problem of that not happening so well. And so the first part of this is, let's look at the fact. Now, your feelings are absolutely facts, whether they're true or not. You may feel that I have disrespected you, and that may be a feeling that's absolutely true. And I may have done nothing that would be considered disrespectful. This doesn't qualify your feelings. If they are your feelings, they are fact. And we help people to be able to see that in first step of this process. Once you've taken the time to deal with the facts, and then to honor your emotions, to say, thank you. You have been a red flag in my life that says something might be out of alignment with my values. Because if trauma happens anytime my values are misaligned, the emotions that we have are the tools. I liken this to football because football has good analogies for this purpose. The game is happening. That's your life. And there possibly could be a violation on the rules. It's not sure that there is, but there might be. And if someone blows the whistle, it's because they think something might have misaligned with the rules. And they take a flag and throw the flag on the field that says, hold up, let's pause. Let's pause this game, your life. And let's check and see if this situation that just happened conflicted with the values of this game, the rules. They stop and they say, first of all, what are the rules? What just happened? What actually happened? Did that violate the rules? But the emotions that we have are like a flag on the play. They're just to get your attention. Something doesn't feel comfortable. This emotion is feeling a little bit uncomfortable. Is it possible that something's conflicting with my values right here in this moment? In community, if we don't share the same identical values, that means there's some values in our existences that are not going to align. The potential for conflict in every human interaction is absolutely there. Shouldn't we have tools to be able to handle that well so that we both come out of that situation well? So once we've looked at the facts, the flag's been thrown on the play of my life. I'm feeling these uncomfortable emotions. Step one is what just happened and how am I feeling? And then giving yourself time to feel what you feel. In this work, I've realized that some people have a value system about emotions where there is a judgment attached. It's good or it's a bad emotion versus it being just an indicator. And for some people, that's the first hurdle. Are emotions good or bad? What do your values say? My hope is that your values in and of themselves don't have a judgment attached. That the human experience that we have the opportunity to share, even here in real time, says that emotions, the whole spectrum is available to me. Now, my behaviors might have some judgment. There's some things I may do, but just having those emotions is information. No judgment. That's my value system. That's a value system that works really well with these tools as well. Once we do that, and you've given time for your emotions to be what they are, if you're angry, be angry. Because remember, violating your values is where the point of trauma happens. If I'm angry and I lie about it, what just happened? Did I just violate my own values? I did. If lying is not a value that I embrace, if that is something that goes against my values, you should not tell lies. And I lie to myself, I have just created trauma in my existence. And trauma is cumulative. The analogy I use is we come into this world naked. Naked. Trauma is like every time something violates our values, we put on a garment of clothing. A shirt here, a sock here, a pants here, a jacket here, and then you go 10 years into life in a traumatizing environment, the world. And then you go 30 years, 40 years, some of us 50 and beyond. And layer by layer by layer, we have these defenses built up. And then I say, go look in the mirror and tell me what you look like. You look like all of this stuff that's happened. This work is about taking it off. If I believe lying is not in my value system and I lie to myself, I am now the person creating the trauma in my life. Some things we have control over, some things we don't. Other people, my value system says, I don't control other people. My value system says, however, I am responsible for me and my behavior. And if I'm part of what's traumatizing me, that I can fix. Once we do that part of the process and we pause, we give time for those emotions to set, we then continue to collect the data information. Back on the football field, what happened? Let's review that now. What are the rules? The rules say, what are the rules for your life? What are the values? Because in this next part of the process, we say, we now have the facts. We know what happened and how I felt about it. Now let's look at it. What are the things that happened in this exchange? What are the values behind what has happened in this exchange? And do I agree with those values or not? You told me what to do. My value system would say, I decide my behavior. If you dictated to me my behavior and my value system says I am responsible for deciding my behavior, do you all see a conflict there in those two values? Would that be an alignment or a misalignment? Those two values don't match. Ooh, maybe that's why I was feeling a little uncomfortable when you dictated my behavior. But we go through, what was my behavior? I said all kind of ugly things about you. I called you a this, and then I called your mother a this and a this. What are your values, Lorana? I treat people with respect. You didn't treat that person with respect, Lorana. You violated your values. Ugh, legitimate flag on that play. And we go through that process of saying, what are the values that were at play in this situation? Which ones conflicted with my values? I'm seeing where the trauma, the ground zero of trauma started. And we list those out. This process encourages you to do this in writing for a lot of reasons. And once you do that, then it's a little bit of a deeper dive. And what are the losses you suffered because of this? What are the losses? Someone else's behavior directed at you, your behavior directed at them. What are the losses? Did you lose some self-respect? Did you lose a relationship? Did you lose time feeling good about your life and your relationship with this person or your interaction with this person? What are the real losses in your life? And what we're doing is we're collecting information because oftentimes the old way of doing, something happens and you start analyzing. And I say to people, well, wouldn't it be better if you had all of the facts first before you started analyzing this situation and making a determination on what this situation means for you. And so we collect that information. What were the values? Which ones did I agree with? Which ones were in conflict with me? What were my losses? And then we get ready to do some self-reflection. And how did I respond? What were my response behaviors? When I was in this situation and I got triggered, how did I respond to that? Let me see how I respond to these kinds of stressors in my life. And we take time to do that part of the process. And then once we have that part of the process done, I've looked at what you've done that's conflicted with my values and a little bit about what I've done that's conflicted. But then I look at my responses and I hold my responses up to the very same light. Did my responses, my behavior, match up with my values? What did I do in response to this situation? Because this is showing me my unhealed parts, perhaps. How did I respond? And in the behavior that I responded with, did I become the perpetrator of abuse to myself and possibly others? And once we have that, then we say, now let's take time to look at this situation with new eyes. I now am very clear of what actually happened, the facts. I've waited to give any judgment until I've then laid out the values by all of the players involved. What were the values on the table? What values were we actually living out in this interaction? Did any of these values conflict with my values and as a result create trauma in my life? Which part of it was your responsibility? And which part of it was mine? And what are the losses because of this? Because that's important. And then once we have guided individuals through that process, we then say, now, in your most loving voice, what do you say to yourself? Because healing is about me. I can't control anyone else's behavior. I can't heal from anyone else. And even though a situation or situations in life may cause trauma, the only person I have control over dealing with is me. I can stop doing the things that create trauma in my life. I can stop doing the things that are behaviors from me that create trauma in other people's life. That I have control of. And as I begin to do healing, and I can set healthy boundaries in love for those who choose not to accept my values. I don't make them accept my values, but I simply learn that when someone doesn't, I am responsible for setting boundaries in my life. And as I began using these tools, because I believe if I can't live it, if it doesn't work for me, why would I share it with anyone else? In a time where we're so desperate for solutions, how do we fix community? Oh, wait, it's me. I am community. I'm the part of community I can absolutely fix. I began to say, we've got hope then. Because if we can't fix us, we can't fix the rest of it. We are the issues with racial relationships. We are the issues with the environment being poisoned. We are the issues with cruelty. It's people. And if people begin to heal, for me, it says we can live these principles from our very diverse spiritual backgrounds, but every bit of it that says me being me. True and authentic, and the real me is me underneath all that damage. That if the only way to get there is to remove the damage, then for us to live out, regardless of your particular spiritual tradition, to live that stuff out, because they all get us back to the it's me. I'm supposed to be here spending my time in love. Then we have the chance to get there. And so that has become the foundation of what seems like a lifetime to me of work of if we're going to fix community, the most strategic thing we can do is to help people do this work of unweaving the damage in their life. We can't control others. And if I begin to do the work, my capacity for the unhealed parts of other people increases. When your behavior, your coping behavior, when I understand that trauma works just like addiction, and if you're using those behaviors, you're using it just like a drug of choice, when I understand that, I can have compassion if I'm healed. Healing. If those areas of my life are healed so that your behavior doesn't trigger me to also do the same thing, we're getting better collectively. We're getting better collectively. We have the capacity to do that thing of loving, to do that thing of becoming citizens of this beloved community, being a part of the change that takes us in the other way. And I sure believe we need it. And so with that, just in brief, part of what these sessions will do will be to make this information available. Because I had a real dilemma with how do you hoard healing? Isn't that the old value system? Isn't that the old paradigm? Yes, there are things. If people want to come and do a healing retreat down here in Ecuador at this center, it costs money. It does. I'm real honest about that. But part of this is for those who are looking for solutions, this provides one. And if others are willing to gather and simply just hear about these tools, it gives me the opportunity to say, out of goodwill, I don't mind sharing the information. And we're going to put it up there so that if someone just says, I need something, and they get miraculously find the YouTube spot that they could go and sit just like we are today and listen through and work through some situations. And so thank you all for being here. And so that's the crux of where we start. I start business development consulting. I start training of all kinds. Let's start here. Let's start here, because if we start making progress here, it makes all of the other real serious issues that we have in community easier. And so today, Dwayne, thank you for participating. And if others want to participate, we're going to see if individuals have a situation. Doesn't have to be too personal. It can be something really shallow. It's up to you. And feel free to just sit and watch in fishbowl if you'd like to. That's fine too. But we're going to take a real life situation and see if we can walk through the steps and what that looks like and what that sounds like, so that if so that you have the benefit of that practice, but two, if others want to follow along, they can hear that and then take their own situation and do their own step-by-step work, following some of the instruction videos that we're putting up and we'll continue to put up online for this purpose. So, Dwayne, do you have a situation for us this evening that we'll start with and use as our practice? Or anyone else? Situation that you've had, any situation that you've had recently that created an uncomfortable emotion. That's our starting point. Dwayne, what you got this evening?
Personally, I don't have anything right now because from the sessions we've had, I've been using the healthy coping mechanisms. So I've been protecting my boundaries in a healthy way, and I haven't had a lot of issues with people. A lot of the situations that would have triggered me before, I've handled them in a much healthier way and let people understand, like, I have no control over you, but there's just a particular way that I like to be treated or I'm going to tolerate in my life. And you and I are not aligned in those values. So I'm gonna have to end this relationship with you. And you know what I'm saying? No love lost. You know what I'm saying? I'm not down to you or anything like that. I'm just saying we aren't aligned. Period. Like, we can't be
So wait, I don't want
friends.
you to dismiss, say, oh wait, I'm not no, because exactly what I talked about. So first is, are you willing to be honest?
Yeah.
How have you seen that you've been required to be honest for these tools to work?
Yeah, for sure.
And then being able to use the process as you're processing life. Have you been using these in real time?
Oh, yeah. That's exactly why. Like, it was just situations that people were trying to put me in that I didn't feel comfortable being in. So once I felt the emotion of wait, like, you know what I mean? Because talking with someone and I didn't want to automatically assume, right? So I began to ask questions in the situation that I normally wouldn't ask. Normally I would have just got upset because I would have just automatically felt disrespected. Because again, I'm from the west side of Chicago and I just grew up a particular way. You
Because you
say
got
things in a
issues. Go on and
particular
say it, because you
right.
got issues like the
I
rest
got
of us.
issues. Right. You know what I mean? I had no dad in my life. I grew up with a teenage mom. You know what I mean? So protecting yourself and not allowing things to happen to you was the utmost important thing in my life during that time. Right.
Okay.
But as I began to heal the trauma and realize I can protect myself and still be a healthy human being,
Mm.
um, like things have just been different. So like I was talking with the person and like the situation just wasn't adding up for me emotionally, right? I just didn't feel like I was being respected as the value that I feel I bring to people's lives, right? So
So I hear I was interacting with you and I felt disrespected.
right,
Short summary, but that would be the step one kind of analysis. Now, if we were doing this written, but if real time, sometimes you have to process in real time. So that was step one. What actually is happening and how am I? There's a flag on your play in your life. Something ain't
right.
feeling right. We hear the common term that I hear younger people. I feel some kind of way. Now I got
pretty
issues with
much,
that.
pretty much. I was feeling away. I was feeling
Yeah.
away. And so, like, the flag was on the play. So I started, like, breaking down the situation. Was there anything that I was doing to lead this person to believe that I would be aligned with that value? Right?
Pause there because part of the foundation of this says, if I give love, the appropriate reflection of that coming back is supposed to be love.
Exactly.
If I give love to you and you do not give love back, then what's supposed to happen with me is not to fight you, but to realize something's wrong.
And
Now,
that's
if
all I did.
I am not giving love, then something is wrong with me.
With me. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was
Yeah.
giving
Okay.
love. I was coming from a place of being of value, right? And I felt like the person was devaluing me and putting me into a place that I didn't want to be in.
Correction. Because would you have to read their mind to think that? What did you think?
Exactly.
You
Okay.
felt devalued.
I
You
felt,
felt.
yeah. Yeah,
Whose mind
I
can you
felt like,
read?
yeah. So yeah, I don't know exactly. I don't know them. I don't know who they are as a person totally, but from the interaction, I was feeling devalued, right? Because
There you
again,
go.
I don't want to make assumptions of a person. I've been trying to do so much better of not making assumptions
Very
of other
good.
people. I'm different. You're different. It's 8 billion people on this planet, and we all have our reality that we live in, right? No one has been raised the exact same. No one has had the exact same experiences. So I can't expect another human being to move the way I move because, again, I've had my experience and they've had their experience. That doesn't make you a bad person. It just means we not aligned.
Exactly.
so okay. So again, I kept the conversation going, multiple different conversations. I came at the situation multiple different ways to see if the value that I thought we weren't aligned in was truly out of alignment. That once they 100% clarified to me, that's exactly how they felt. I knew the value was out. I was like, okay, that's it. You know what I mean? Like basically, I just that's the end of it. You know what I mean? Because like we talked about at that moment when the values aren't aligned, right? Your number one job is to get out of the situation, right? And
Get to
you got to get
safety,
out
and
of the
then
situation.
second, wait, first, get to safety. That's real.
Right. Safety
If
is
you're in
the
a
most
situation
important
and
thing.
someone's violating your values, active traumatizing is happening. You're
Right.
live. Once you understand that someone's values don't match, what's your next responsibility?
It's to get out of the situation.
What got out of the situation? What next? Do you
Oh,
remember?
no, I don't.
If
Give me that one.
someone, if I recognize that my values in this particular interaction and yours don't align, You're behaving one way towards me. I feel like I should not be disrespected or treated in a disrespectful way. And you're doing that thing to me. Once I get to safety, then it's my responsibility, if I'm taking care of myself, to establish boundaries. Boundaries are what we put. They're the gates we put for people who do not share our values, not in talk, in action. Because this is sometimes you have values and you can't live them out because you got issues. I think I'm supposed to be respectful to you, but I still cuss you out. What's the disconnect? They call that dissonance, the difference between what you believe and what you can actually do. And so trauma happens with what you can actually do. Sometimes we can't live our values because I got issues. And my issues work just like addiction. Before I know it, because I felt disrespected, I reached for my behavioral drug of choice. And what happens is we layer those. If those start working, we add substances. We add other things to get us back in control of that fear that we begin to feel. Guilt, insecurity, different kinds of emotions, but it all boils down to fear. And so part of this is healing the area so that we're not just in knee-jerk reaction mode. We're not just reaching for those behaviors. As a kid, as a young kid, very young kid, I worked myself out of this really quick. I used to fight in elementary school. At the time, I was the tallest kid in class, and I was weird. I was just weird, but I was real good at fighting. And I'd fight boys. I'd fight boys for anybody until one of them hit me in my nose, and I went, "Oh, I don't like being hit. I'm not fighting anymore." Like I didn't understand until it was me. Of course, you shouldn't hit people, but I was. Part of it was I was living out of my insecurities. The behavior was to compensate for my insecurities. That was my drug of choice until a crisis happened and it shifted my paradigm quite drastically. But we do this in real life and we practice it and we get better at it. As you've used this, one last question, and then we'll go into a practical experience. As you've used this, as you begin to do the healing work, have you seen your capacity to interact in more loving ways with people increase?
Yeah, actually, it's like now, especially because I'm one of them people like if you say something just off the wall that just makes no sense whatsoever, like I usually would just go at you, right? Because it's just like that. You can't be that stupid. So you either have to be trolling or intentionally like trying like with malice to be mean to people, right? But now I'm just like, they have a right to be stupid. Like, you know what I mean? Like
We got the judgment part, but okay, I get your point. Growth. We're growing.
I'm working. Like I have,
and small steps is good. For real.
like
This is real life.
I have ADHD and autism, so like certain things for me are just cut and dry, and there is no way around it. I'm working on words that don't offend people and things like that nature. Like with again, like I said, with giving grace because I want grace, right? And I understand that I think differently and I do things differently, and I may offend someone or I might say something or do something.
Did you say your value is people deserve grace?
Yeah.
And yet, hold on, let's look at this. Just look at this model. People deserve grace. That's my value. Yet I'm in a situation where I treat someone with the opposite of grace. Who is creating trauma in your life in that scenario?
Me every time. That's why I give grace now because I don't want to. Yeah. I don't want to create that trauma for myself anymore. Like I said, from our talks when you told me every time that I did something that went against my values, I created trauma for myself. That was like the biggest thing for me because it was just like, oh, okay, cool. That's one thing I could do for sure. Like I can't control other people and them bringing trauma to me, but I could definitely control how much trauma I give to myself. So, okay, cool. Every time I feel the value out of alignment, just go back in alignment with my values and then I don't create no trauma. I'm cool with that. I can do that.
Some of our great spiritual leaders, one of them says, be the change.
That's it.
Be the change. If you believe people should have grace and that's your value, if you live anything other than that, you are part of not only creating trauma for you, but probably other people that interact with you and get the short end of your grace stick. Part of this is, regardless of the spiritual traditions, and I've become very bilingual in the spiritual traditions by working in an interfaith space. If you're Christian, they got some scriptures for that. If you're Muslim, they got some scriptures for that too. If you're Taoist or Buddhist or pagan or Wiccan or any number of spiritual traditions, every bit of it gets you right there to that same spot. Living it, being the embodiment of that. How do we do that? We have to remove the layers that cause us to be in those knee-jerk reactions. Trauma is the addiction. The drugs of choice start with behavioral. They include all kind of things. That's why it's so hard to pin down, because your drug of choice might be shopping or costuming of whatever kind. Your drug of choice may be substances. Your drug of choice may be lots of things. And we got some real good drugs of choice in the world today. The hype and the adrenaline of money or social media or things like sex, alcohol, shopping, QVC, whichever lane is yours, whatever your mix of those behaviors that soothe that fear, guilt, and insecurity. It's saying, whatever it is, the answer is the same for each one of us. We have a 100% trauma rate in society. We live in a very traumatizing world every single day. There are things that conflict with our values. And if it's a cumulative process, then stopping the damage that we are in control of makes us better, takes us in the opposite direction. And so I'd like to go through a real life scenario. If no one's got one, I'll put one on the table and we can walk through it together. From a recent experience for me, because I use these tools in my regular life too. Life does not stop. That game of life, unlike the football game, keeps going. I had a situation. Let's see if I can give you the facts of it. I was asked to participate in an online class. I asked very specific questions about my time involvement and the expectations. I was given very specific information about my expectations. A month before, I expressed to the leader that I had some questions about the expectations because there was information that was put out to the participants that conflicted with what I had been told. The individual did not make time to have that meeting and started the training session. I reiterated that in order for me to be comfortable going forward, I needed to have some clarification on the expectations because the expectations seemed to violate the original agreement. The individual scheduled a time and informed me that they indeed had additional expectations that they had not communicated honestly from the beginning. I terminated my involvement with the program. I felt frustrated, taken advantage of, and annoyed. That would be the end of step one. Was there anything in that summary of facts that did not feel like facts?
No.
Were you able to see the situation with both parties involved? I did this, you did this, different words, but see that fact telling play out.
Definitely.
Yeah.
You depicted the situation perfectly.
Were you able to see the emotions that I was wrestling with?
Yes.
Okay. And then I would take time to say, how long do you want to be annoyed over this situation? Because I get to choose that too. How long do you want to be frustrated with this situation? This, you know that feel? It ain't really words, but it's like, huh? and then you said, do you understand what that feels like? Have you ever had a situation where you can identify with that feeling? I get to choose how long I spend in that mode. How long do you need, Lorana, to process these emotions till it's gone? Okay, let's. No, I'm still feeling a little salty. I ain't ready to start processing yet. I'm gonna sit with this for a minute. Okay. I'm ready for this to. I'm ready to process through this and make sure that any damage, because I already speculate that there's some confliction in my value system, which means this is a traumatizing thing. Is it a big trauma? Probably not in the big scope of life, but it's cumulative. I'm a farmer. I'm a retired farmer. If a weed still has roots in the ground and I don't want it there sucking the nutrients and the water out of the ground from the plants that I have invested in, I got to get it all out. Because if not, I will come back next week and I will still have to put energy into that weed. Same with life.
Exactly.
Same with life. And for me, in the chapter of life I don't want that stuff there. I want clear out that space. And I have plenty of time now to fill any of those empty spaces with love now. So if I see it come up, I want to get to it. So, okay, saltiness is gone. Lorana, we're ready now to finish processing this. You spent as much time, 15 seconds, as you want to on feeling annoyed and frustrated with people, because people just being who they are. They're doing their best. That's my value system. What I see is their best, and it may require me to put some boundaries up, but they are doing their best. If they could do better, they would. I disagree with the Maya Angelou statement that says, when you know better, you do better, because that's not real life. I can know better and still be sideways and dysfunctional in my existence. What I realized was when I know better, then I have to be committed to doing the healing of those areas, because the healing is what helps me to do better. So I'm going to move on now to step 2 of the process. And this is just to give people and give you an understanding of what it looks like in real life. This is my real life. This is my real life. I got issues in my real life every day. And I'm working on some of the old stuff. I've been working on some of the big boulders. But as you do that, now you got some sand and irritants that happen in your life that still catch you. You know, I'm not at the Zen every day, a whole lot of times, because a whole lot of things don't bother me, because my value system now is different. Folk got issues. When I see bad behavior, I go, they got issues. I'm just seeing their drugs of choice being used. And when they're ready, they're ready. Let me not cause no harm to them. Let me see what the most loving thing I can do, because I don't want to be guilty of doing nothing. Talking about cosmic balance. I don't want to be guilty of adding to their issue. If I see them and they having an issue and it ain't love, and I done gave them some good love, I don't want to be responsible for their demise. And if I go sideways on them because of my ego stuff, I'm going to make them worse. How is that even helping me? They're going to be worse after I go off on them and cuss them out. Not logical. I'm going to do the least amount of damage, do no harm, if you can. They used to say, if you can't say nothing nice, don't say nothing at all. There's some truth in that. If you can't do something loving, don't do nothing. That would be better than to go cross that line beyond neutral. So then we go to step 2. What are my values? My values are 1, I am not obligated, nor will I spend a whole lot of energy trying to read someone else's mind. Nope. My value system says I do not read minds of other people. Nope. My value system says state my expectations clearly. State my expectations clearly. I explained what I was willing to do and what time I was willing to commit to this thing. I spelled it out very clearly. I put it in writing. We had a conversation about that. I did the best I could do to communicating that. It's my responsibility to communicate my expectations and my boundaries. That's my value system. I expect people to be honest. Are people always honest? No, I understand that. But when they're not, I know that that is a value confliction for me. Careful, self. This is, if you continue to engage and this person continues to be dishonest, it's going to cause you some trauma. Decide the investments you want to make in this relationship. How much trauma are you willing to accept? Because we make those choices too. I'll accept a whole lot more trauma out of my children than I would a stranger. That's just real. That's my choice. What are my other values in this situation? One of the values was, I won't tell you everything that I really want from you. That's a value that was at play. If I were doing this in my journal, disagree, disagree, in conflict with my values. One of the other values was, I don't have to be honest. Other values that I can think of in this scenario: when confronted, lie. That's a value that was at play in this situation. And if I were doing this process through, I would say that one and that one and that one I disagree with. Those are conflicting values. Ground zero is from trauma. Because if we're going to deal with people, the reality is you're going to have conflict. Being a part of community, and this is what this is all about, healing community. If you choose to interact with someone who is not identical to you, it is reasonable. The anticipatory preparedness says it is reasonable to expect that there will be moments of your interaction where your values are not aligned. And by this definition, that means there will be times where this interaction is going to create trauma. The only way to avoid it is to never interact with people. Does that sound like community to you? It doesn't to me. And then once I realized which values were out of alignment, my value for people being honest, conflicted. My value for stating your expectations for me in response specifically to a direct question where I ask you very specifically what your expectations were. Confliction. What were my losses? I spent 3 months interacting on this project, trying to get clarity on the discomfort that I felt that for me was a signal of potential misalignment of values. Especially when I see advertisement that says, I'm going to do something that I've told you I'm not going to do, nor am I interested in doing. My losses were time feeling positive. I spent some time out of my life feeling frustrated, annoyed, maybe a little disgusted, but a whole lot of annoyance and frustration. That's a loss for me. This is my life. I got important things I could do with my life, like go play Frisbee on Friday. That's important. That's a whole lot more important than negative feelings. I would rather go play in the park than feel negative and disgusted and frustrated about anything in life. I think that's one of the ground rules of retirement. You think so? At least it should be. That's a loss for me. I lost the opportunity to be known. This was someone that wanted to get to know me, my work. My reality was they wanted to use my resources and my skills, but not get to know me. That's a loss for me. My work is about developing relationships with people, getting to know people, letting them get to know me. So that was a loss. And then my responses. I established a new boundary. I clearly stated that I would no longer be participating. I reconfirmed that in writing. I spent time feeling frustrated about the situation. I called my godmother and shared my processing steps with her. That's how I responded. And then once I did the exhale, checked my emotions to see if I was ready to go forward, I said, let's look at my behavior. Were you clear? Mm-hmm. You state your expectations. Mm-hmm. State your boundaries. Mm-hmm. I did. Were you honest? Yes, I was. When you realized that you were out of alignment in values, did you set healthy, loving boundaries? Absolutely. I can change my mind at any given time, my value system. I changed my willingness to be involved. My value system says I have the right to dictate how I spend my time. And I have the right to decide to spend it on things that I choose to, on my terms. Was there anything that I did that conflicted with my values? In my processing, no. That girl, you didn't tell off? No, no. You didn't write a nasty note? You didn't talk nasty about it on Facebook or Instagram? No, no, I didn't do that. Who you growing up a little bit? Who you growing up? Your healing is working for you, girl. You're doing better. You're doing better. But then the next step of the process is, now that you've got all the facts on the table, now have a loving conversation with yourself. Dear Lorana, what would you say to you? And part of my response to myself was, dear Lorana, you did a good job. You made sure to be very specific in what your needs and expectations were. When you felt out of alignment, you made that known swiftly. You asked for the opportunity to gain clarity and decide if there indeed was a misalignment. You spoke your truth, and you made a decision that you feel good about. You did a good job, and this is growth. That was my letter to self. That was my talk to myself. Because part of this is, am I living my values? Am I living the values that I say? Isn't that what all of our faith traditions tell us? Live these principles, live these values. We can't do it, though, because of our damage sometimes. My test personally is, am I living my values? Lorana, you're committed to doing the things that feel loving in your life. You're committed to doing things with no resentment, which means saying no to things that you would do and then feel resentful about. Your values say you are to treat people with respect and love, even ones that you disagree with. Did you do that? Did you treat her disrespectfully? No, I didn't. I was a little frustrated part of the conversation, and I admitted that to her. I'm very frustrated. This is working my nerves because I'm very specific when I ask questions. When I ask so that I can set appropriate boundaries, or so that when I say I can commit to something, that I've really taken in the information, but you weren't honest with me, which means you took away my choice to make an honest decision based on the real facts. But as soon as I clarified what those expectations were, and I realized it did not fit for me, did I stay there and just tough it out? No, that's my old behavior. And then I'm the one suffering and feeling bad, traumatizing myself, because I'd be the one making that decision, not anyone else. Most things in life, no one's twisting your arm behind your back. I would have been the abuser in that situation, causing trauma to myself. And that's not a price I was willing to pay. Self, we did good. Self, you decided that you were going to stay in it until you had clarification, and you did. And you did it pleasant attitude. You weren't nasty. You didn't make it personal. You didn't hit below the belt. You simply asked for clarity because your value system says, I will not read someone else's mind. I expect people to use their words and tell me what they think, what they want. And I held true to that. And so this is a real life situation where I use these tools in my daily life. And part of that is what has helped me become so passionate about this approach to healing community. It's spiritual work. Fixing so that your mind and your heart match up? The things you believe in your heart, that your mind actually makes you do the behaviors that line up with that? And so for me, how do we fix community? We have to do this deep work. Because when I do the healing, then what happens is I'm not triggered. Now, in my old days, I would have given her a piece of my mind. You know, you want to get something out of me, and that's not something I agree to give you, and then you want to come around the backhand way and we would have been at war. Because I would have felt disrespected, taken advantage of. But I realized that when I began to do my healing work, I can feel all of those things and still make sure that my behavior lines up with my values. I've chosen to live a life of love as best as I can, to the best of my ability, recognizing that I got issues too, still working on it. Being able to interact in this way, that I'm angry, I'm frustrated, and I'm really annoyed. Yet I can still treat you with love and respect. I can respect both me and you at the same time. That's why I set boundaries, because those boundaries help you to understand I can love you real good from this distance. If you come any closer, I may not be able to give you the love that I really want to. So it's for my benefit and for yours that I set boundaries. And part of this is, what if communities began to heal? And when we think about that, it's the reality that I am community. My capacity increases. I become more capable of interacting with you in love, even when I encounter your unhealed parts. And if we do that work together, I got grace for your unhealed parts and you're having grace for mine, we're minimizing the damage. We're minimizing this cumulative effect. I believe passionately that if we're going to heal community, it starts with us. Are we willing to be honest? Are we willing to hold the mirror to ourselves and do that healing work? And wouldn't it be better if we did it together? Any questions on the process? Were you able to see how this process could help you in dealing with situations in life for real?
It has definitely helped me. I gotta be honest. Like I can't lie. It has helped me a lot, man. Like the way I deal with people, the way I set boundaries now, like I can still be in a place of love at all times for most situations. Like and it just feels great to be able to just be like, you know what? Or like now I even notice people reaching for their drug of choice. Like that's the thing that I like the most about it, is that I can actually see it happening in the moment. Like I can feel it, like I can feel the shift in them. I can just see it in situations, and I just be like, oh, okay. Even though whatever I did, it wasn't intentional, but I just triggered them. And I see them reaching for their drug of choice. Okay, cool. Since I know
What's
what it
the
is,
antidote? What's the antidote?
it's just I'm not gonna keep feeding the fire. That's all. Just don't feed the fire anymore for them. I see what it is. Okay, I
That's
tapped
called
something.
love. No.
Yeah.
I want you to put words to it. That's
Oh, that's
called love. If
love.
I
Okay, yeah,
see that something I'm doing is triggering you, love is the antidote. Love. If I then understand that you're triggered, you got issues going on and you're reaching for that now, you're in a place where you don't feel. I grew up with an uncle who had a heroin addict, was a heroin addict. Loved him. Wouldn't leave him at the home at home alone because he stole stuff. He's gotten clean. His life has turned around. But when someone's reaching for their drug of choice, can you have a logical conversation with them? Like, come on, people, let's just think
no,
logically. If
no,
someone
you
is,
can't.
you ever seen somebody drunk? You ever seen somebody high and you want to talk philosophical logic with them? How does that work? What do they say about people on addiction? When they're ready to change, that's the best time for transformation. Until then, you just love them. You love them and set boundaries, but you just love them. What you're talking about is, I saw that something I did triggered them. Because sometimes it's stuff from the past. It has nothing to do. You may not be violating them in that moment and they still be triggered.
Yeah.
If you recognize that, you can do what's the most loving thing I could do in this situation, because love is the antidote. Sometimes it is let's come back at a time when this has dispelled, when they have the capacity to have a conversation. Sometimes, but if your ego's in charge, you got to hear me right now. You got to hear what I got to say right this minute. And I see you elevating.
Yeah.
Sometimes
No,
the most loving
I
thing we can
definitely be
do is,
backing out of situations like, I've even said to people like, I'm healing and I still have unhealed pieces of me. And I can see this conversation is eventually going to trigger one of them unhealed parts of me. And I don't want to damage myself nor you. So I'm going to back out of this conversation. Like, I have said that to people in conversation just because I have felt the energy shift, or like that they weren't trying to be positive in the exchange. Like they had something, or they came in with an agenda and they were going to stay on that agenda no matter what I said, nothing I did. And I was like, you know what? This ain't gonna go well. Okay, cool. I'll go back out. I'm out of here. Bye bye. Put on the brakes. Get up out of here. Like get out of this situation. Cause I'm gonna get triggered. And me getting triggered definitely means I'm gonna trigger you, because I know how I'm gonna react. And I don't want to react like that, because I don't want to be that person anymore. So you know what? You can have it. Like, it ain't that important. 5 years from now, this is not gonna matter. You can have this win if your ego needs to win. My ego does not need to win, because I'm breaking down the walls of having the ego in all moments of life. So you can have it. I'm done. All right, cool. Whatever. And it feels so good to just be able to walk away with a smile and understanding, like, dang, just who I am as a human being is irritating people now. Like, and I just been telling myself, my spirit is irritating their demons. So just let they demons be. You know what I'm saying? Like, it is what it is. Like, we all got demons. Like, and I'm not walking around in mine, but I can see yours. So I'm just gonna stay in a place of love because I can see your demons and I don't want to let mine loose anymore. So you can have it. You and your demons can have the win.
boundaries are about placing the gates of access to our lives so that I can, one, love me well, and two, love you to the best of my ability. That's what boundaries do for us. Boundaries are the things that I put in place when I realize that someone does not share my values. Boundaries aren't usually necessary for people that share your values. If you and I agree that we're going to treat each other with love and respect, and we agree on that and have the capacity to live that out, do we need boundaries? No, because you're going to treat me with respect and I'm going to treat you. If you think that you don't need to treat me with respect, violation potential, I need to set boundaries then. And the boundaries aren't what you need to do. The boundaries are, when someone does not treat me with respect, I end the conversation. Period. It ain't personal. This is how I protect me. This is how I love myself. If someone doesn't, then that is an abusive, traumatizing situation that they're going to create. And I don't want to be traumatized. So therefore, do what you want to do. But if it crosses that line into what makes me feel disrespected, this conversation will be over, because part of what I can control is ending this conversation. Those are things that help me love me and be able to interact with people who may not share my own values. It's my boundaries. It's my boundaries. Any other thoughts or feedback this evening? Thoughts, feedback, questions, observations? Any of it feel familiar to you?
Well, Lorana, I have a question.
Sure.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when you were talking about the value system, and I just want to be clear on, I know you stated what your values are. So is part of your value system based on what the other person, I guess you're saying, it's making you feel upset or annoyed.
So let me
Like,
talk about that for a minute. We don't talk about values so much in society. We often, when we actually talk about values, here's how we frame them.
okay.
People should do this. People should behave this way. There are also expectations. I expected you to not speak to me, yelling at me, cussing me out. My expectations are such that people should not interact in those ways, or at least with me. Oftentimes, we don't use that term, this is my value. I think we should.
Okay.
But often it's the shoulds and the expectations of life. How did you expect that person to treat you? I interacted with you and I felt some kind of way. Yeah, what were you expecting? Oh, wait, I was expecting you to be supportive of me. I was expecting you to listen to me. I was expecting you to listen to me. Wait a minute, Lorana, what are your values? Is someone obligated to listen to you just because you want them to? No. So you expecting them to listen to you? I wanted you to listen to me, but you're not obligated to listen to me. Oh, thank you for clearing it up, self. So your value really isn't, you mad because they didn't listen to you, but your value says they have a right to decide whether they listen to you or not. You don't want to have to listen to anybody just because. You want to have a right to say, I choose to give you my time and energy. Well, are you treating that person with that same set of values? Because if not, you are going to violate your own values, Lorana. Oh, let me rethink this. I would like for you to listen to me, but I understand that you have the right. So maybe what I should do is first say, do you have the capacity to listen to me today? That would line up with my values, wouldn't it? Part of that scenario, you need to listen to me. I would have to have a value system that says I get to control what somebody else does. I get to dictate how someone else spends their time. I get to dictate that they listen to me when I want them to listen to me. That's what I'm living out. And then this process says, that's what you lived out. Now, do you believe those values? Nope. Nope. Because we live values that we don't align. That's what's wrong with us. We are part of this cycle. So what I really mean is, I would like for you to listen to me. Isn't that different than saying you're supposed to listen to me? Two different things, two different values. If I want your time, am I obligated to ask for your time? I should ask for someone's time and emotional energy if I want it. Someone has the right to decide whether to give it. That means they can say no.
All right. So you're saying basically don't make assumptions. Don't put your assumptions on someone else.
I say, if your value is conflicted, you will create trauma. What is your value? Is your value that you should dictate how other people behave?
No.
Because see, I can't tell you what your values are. We try to in community, and that ain't working so good for us. You would have to decide, do you feel you have the right to decide how someone else spends their time?
No. I mean, the way I look at things, I have no control of how someone responds to what I say.
That's a value. That's a value. You hear that? This is how we should behave. That's a value. You haven't framed it in those words, and most of the time, as I begin to do this work with people, that's hard because we don't talk that way in society. Except for you in church. These are your principles, your tenets of faith. These are the values, or this scripture is what you, or when somebody beating you up about something that you didn't do, they're trying to prove, why you, our values are those pieces. And it doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong. If it's conflicted, you're going to get trauma. I deal with this when I deal with racial situations. We have two people here. Willow, white presenting, don't know ethnicity. LaShawn, brown, of African descent of some kind, brown producing. But when we talk about racism, usually it's one group saying it's the other one that's got the issue. If you, and I'm not using you I'm using you symbolically. If you as a white person felt like Blacks were not equal or worthy at the same standard, and someone made you treat them like equal, does that conflict with your values?
Mm-hmm.
Your values are conflicted. You're traumatized, period. You got trauma. And if
Right.
I, as a LaShawn, as a African-American person, feels like I should not be judged based on my skin color, which I have no choice for, and someone treats you in a way that's disrespectful based on that, you're traumatized because both sides are traumatized. Both. Your reason for needing someone to be worse than you. I need to be better than someone else, and I'm going to use this, or I'm going to use gender. You're a woman versus a male, or I'm going to use makeup, any
Right.
number of things that we use to do this with.
Right.
If that is conflicted, there's trauma. Until we heal the trauma, we can't even talk about whether the values are right or wrong, beneficial
Mm-hmm.
or not for society. We got to first heal the trauma. We got to first be honest and committed to healing. And then we have to be true to say, I don't care what my values are, because this is a no judgment. We're not judging your values. We're just simply saying, was your value conflicted? Yep, then let's deal with the trauma. Because in that process, it's, do you believe that people of this particular color, because it works both ways. It's because you're white, you're this. I see you in this light. Everybody, all y'all get put in the same boat. We do it in both ways. Is that do you want people to judge you based on the color of your skin? Should we judge people based on the amount of melanin in their skin? Yes or no? Doesn't matter what color you are, doesn't matter what your heritage is. If we're looking at it from a value standpoint, we can now all talk apples and apples, oranges and oranges. Is it okay to judge people based on an arbitrary biological thing that they have no choice over? Yes or no? Now, if you are doing that, then you are creating trauma in your life. Period. Right. And so part of this is we don't even get to analyzing the good or bad. You do it in your own process. And then we can do it at a community level. But the understanding that there's trauma there. Why we need to make someone better or worse than ourselves. But if we understand that that's the value issue, someone else has to be worse than me. How many other areas in our life? Dwayne kind of hit on this, and we kind of said, okay, we're going, if I think my intelligence makes me better than you, any reason that I got to be better or worse than you, any reason is the same issue. I got more money than you. I got more education than you. I got more bedrooms in my house than you. I got a certain kind of car that you don't have. I wear this name brand clothes. My hair looks this way. I got this, boom, boom, boom. If any reason that I need to be better or someone needs to be worse than me, it's the same issue. We don't like to say that. It's the same as racism, xenophobia, any of the other phobias that are about someone being better or worse. Same problem, same core value issue. Why do I need that to be the case? Fear, guilt, and insecurity of my own. Mm-hmm. My own fear, my own guilt, my own insecurity. I will feel less worthy if you appear more worthy in my whatever logic I'm swirling. If we fix your reason for not feeling worthy, we begin to fix all those your need for those drugs of choice, because that's what they are. I use those behavioral drugs of choice to help me not feel the fear, the guilt, and the insecurities. And so if we're going to fix it at the core, one, it starts with us. Because I can't do it for you, LaShawn. I can't decide what your values are. Willow can't decide. Dwayne can't decide for you. That would be way too much emotional energy for me to do. Me carrying the values of everybody in the whole wide world. Nope, not going to do it. Me. But if we, and this is the RePioneering Church, if you and me both agree Come on, y'all. Let's get ourselves together. Let's get these layers off so that we have more capacity to love. Let's do it together. It's you and me, and we'll find the points of connection where our lives interlap, and we can do life together in those ways. And we're going to learn to love everybody else, because like any other kind of addiction, when's a good time for you to heal? When you get ready.
Yeah.
When have you been forced to do something you didn't want to do? How did that work out for you? Healing is the same way. So if I can't control you, and when you're ready to heal, all I can do is love you and set healthy, loving boundaries so that I can love me too at the same time. That's something I can do. And what if that's how we started healing community? For me, I believe it's the only way, because everything else is behavior modification. I got to either put you in a chokehold or give you some goodies, and we out of goodies, and we ain't really got no more threats that we can make on people to make them act right. That's what I used to get told. You better act right. I don't care what you believe, you better act right. You better act right. And then behavior modification came in because I grew up in the get your whooping kind of stage. Politically correctness, all that kind of stuff. We don't do that too much. We don't talk about it, at least. It's still happening. But behavior modification, we do it in other ways. But I believe that if we're going to do transformational change, the kind where you ain't got to keep people in a chokehold and keep threatening them, we help them heal. Because love is just as addictive as the other direction. When you start feeling good, I hear it in Dwayne's voice. I ain't trying to do that no more. I know how that works. I know how that feels. I ain't trying to go there no more. Love is the same kind of addiction. If you replace the negative, life-sucking behaviors with those that are loving, life-supporting, we change the trajectory. It's a pendulum. We're going to get to that pendulum point where we have to come back. We're not quite there yet. It's not quite painful enough yet for us to leave that old way. But for those who feel called to begin making that change in a deeper way, healing is the answer. I believe that wholeheartedly. It feels good, if nothing else. And I have resolved that I might be absolutely wrong, and I'm still okay with that, because removing the things in my life, the fear, guilt, and insecurity, has opened up a new level of freedom, a new level of love and honesty. Me being able to be who I am and committed. Because when I see who I am in the mirror and I go, girl, your issues is showing. To say, but I have the tools now. That when those issues show up, I have the courage. I've seen the results. I'm going to dig it out. Will I spend a few minutes being frustrated? Absolutely. Because I want to. And I can do what I want to do. But then I quickly say, how much of your life do you want to be sucked down in this mode? You got playing to do. You trying to pick up some wiffle ball. They got a wiffle ball game every Saturday morning, but it conflicts with my going to the market and my $2 flower thing. So I got to make some life decisions. But I'd rather do that than spend it in ways that just tear my soul out. And it sure enough probably causes harm. Because if I get triggered in my unhealed spots, I'm going to do damage too. And so part of this is, if we are going to heal, let's do it. Question.
Well, I will say that from what you went over, addressing your triggers, your losses, how you respond, and setting boundaries, I feel like that is the right direction, because we don't recognize, as people recognize our triggers. Like, why am I feeling this way? Because some people dismiss how they feel because, one, I don't want to upset this person, or I don't want to make this person mad. But how am I feeling? A lot of people dismiss how they feel to help other people. And I never thought about losses. That's one thing I never thought about. What are you losing? So
what's the cost? What's the
yeah.
cost? I heard Dwayne say it. It ain't worth it. You can have it. You can have it. You got this. You want to win the fight? You got it. Take it on. Take it on. Take it on. You got it. What does it cost? This is your life.
It's definitely helpful, because I read a book on setting boundaries. Because a lot of times we don't do that.
Yeah.
We don't set boundaries. And that's our fault. It's not the other person's fault. It's our fault, because you know what you don't want to do and what you do want to do. And if it's always about trying to please other people, you're going to be, like you said, putting on layers constantly.
Yeah.
So very good. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you all for joining me. Part of this is how I feel like I can hold true to my values of not hoarding healing, that I will be over the next year. We'll be doing this every fourth Sunday at the same time. And I'll be making these available so that if individuals have real life situations, that they can take this guidance and be able to walk through the steps. We have some of the printed information that'll also be available that give them some of the writing prompts, because we encourage people to do this in their journaling. But I want to thank you, Dwayne. Thank you for allowing me to share with you and for you to use and be able to give us some real life feedback. LaShawn, for your input. Willow's gone, but we appreciate her for listening in and allowing me to share this with you all. Thank you for giving me your time. I'll be respectful of the time, and we will bring this to a close. Thank you all. Have a great week this week. Keep up the good work, Dwayne. LaShawn, I encourage you, I challenge you, when any kind of uncomfortable emotion goes up, go to the steps and see if it doesn't give you a different kind of insight to then do that loving life processing. Thank you all for sharing. For those that may be listening, thank you for allowing us to share the healing work that RePioneering Church is doing. You can find out more information on the interconnected projects at wastedtime.com. We also have a page on Facebook where you can reach RePioneering Church. But if we can be of assistance in any of the interconnected programming we have, please feel free to reach out. Thank you for your time, and you all have a great evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.